name is Quinn, and I am a bookseller here at the Reading Room, CLE. This is Cha-Cha, our proprietress. Today, we spent the whole day doing meal prep. I made corned beef and oven potatoes for myself, and I made chicken broth for Cha-Cha, and I turned it into little chicken broth Italian ices, which is the first thing she's enjoying. And then also, I made her some lamb and duck parfaits, which I think she's very excited to enjoy over the next month or so. She's also going to enjoy this story tonight. It is called The Truth is a Cave in the Black Mountains, and it is by Neil Gaiman. You ask me if I can forgive myself. I can forgive myself for many things, for where I left him, for what I did. But I will not forgive myself for the year that I hated my daughter when I believed her to have run away, perhaps to the city. During that year, I forbade her name to be mentioned, and if her name entered my prayers when I prayed, it was to ask that she would one day learn the meaning of what she had done, of the dishonor that she had brought to my family, of the red that ringed her mother's eyes. I hate myself for that, and nothing will ease that, not even what happened that night on the side of the mountain. I had searched for nearly 10 years. Although the trail was cold, I would say that I found him by accident, but I do not believe in accidents. If you walk the path, eventually you must arrive at the cave. But that was later. First, there was the valley on the mainland, the whitewashed house in the gentle meadow with the burn splashing through it, a house that sat like a square of white sky against the green of the grass and the heather just beginning to purple. And there was a boy outside the house picking wool from off a thorn bush. He did not see me approaching, and he did not look up until I said, "I used to do that. Gather the wool from the thorn bushes and twigs, my mother would wash it. Then she would make me things with it. A ball and a doll." He turned. He looked shocked as if I had appeared out of nowhere, and I had not. I had walked many a mile and had many more miles to go. I said, "I walk quietly. Is this the house of Colin McInnes?" The boy nodded, drew himself up to his full height, which was perhaps 2 fingers bigger than mine, and he said, "I am Colin McInnes." "Is there another of that name? For the Colin McInnes that I seek is a grown man." The boy said nothing, just unknotted a thick clump of sheep's wool from the clutching fingers of the thorn bush. I said, "Your father, perhaps? Would he be Colin McInnes as well?" The boy was peering at me. "What are you?" he asked. "I am a small man," I told him. "But I am a man, nonetheless, and I am here to see Colin McInnes." "Why?" The boy hesitated. Then, "And why are you so small?" I said, "Because I have something to ask your father. Man's business." And I saw a smile start at the tips of his lips. "It's not a bad thing to be small, young Colin. There was a night when the Campbells came knocking on my door, a whole troop of them, 12 men with knives and sticks, and they demanded of my wife Morag that she produce me, as they were there to kill me, in revenge for some imagined slight. And she said, 'Young Johnny, run down to the farm meadow and tell your father to come back to the house that I sent for him.' And the Campbells watched as the boy ran out the door. They knew I was a most dangerous person, but nobody had told them that I was a wee man, or if that had been told them, it had not been believed." "Did the boy call you?" said the lad. "It was no boy," I told him, "but me myself it was, and they'd had me, and still I walked out the door and through their fingers." The boy laughed. Then he said, "Why were the Campbells after you?" "It was a disagreement about the ownership of cattle. They thought the cows were theirs. I maintained the Campbells' ownership of them had ended the first night the cows had come with me over the hills." "Wait here," said young Colin McInnes. I sat by the burn and looked up at the house. It was a good-sized house. I would have taken it for the house of a doctor or a man of law, not for the house of a border reaver. There were pebbles on the ground, and I made a pile of them, and I tossed the pebbles, one by one, into the burn. I have a good eye, and I enjoyed rattling the pebbles over the meadow and into the water. I had thrown 100 stones when the boy returned, accompanied by a tall, loping man. His hair was streaked with gray. His face was long and wolfish. There are no wolves in those hills, not any longer, and the bears have gone too. Good day to you, I said. He said nothing in return, only stared. I am used to stares. I said, I am seeking Colin McInnes. If you are he, say so, I will greet you. If you are not he, tell me now, and I will be on my way. What business would you have with Colin McInnes? I wish to hire him as a guide. And where is it you would wish to be taken? I stared at him. That is hard to say, I told him, for there are some who say it does not exist. There is a certain cave on the Misty Isle. He said nothing. Then he said, Colin, go back to the house. But tell your mother I said she was to give you some tablet. You like that. Go on. Expressions crossed the boy's face. Puzzlement, hunger, happiness, and then he turned and ran back to the White House. Colin McInnes said, Who sent you here? I pointed to the burn as it splashed its way between us on its journey down the hill. What's that? I asked. Water, he replied. And they say there is a king across it, I told him. I did not know him then at all, and never knew him well, but his eyes became guarded and his head cocked to one side. How do I know you are who you say you are? I have claimed nothing, I said, just that there are those who have heard that there is a cave on the Misty Isle, and that you might know the way. He said, I will not tell you where the cave is. I'm not here asking for directions. I seek a guide, and two travel more safely than one. He looked me up and down, and I waited for the joke about my size, but he did not make it, and for that I was grateful. He just said, when we reach the cave, I will not go inside. You must bring out the gold yourself. I said, it's all one to me. He said, you can take only what you carry. I will not touch it. But yes, I will take you. I said, you'll be paid well for your trouble. I reached into my jerkin, handed him the pouch I had in there. This for taking me. Another, twice the size, when we returned. He poured the coins from the pouch into his huge hand, and he nodded. Silver, he said. Good. I will say goodbye to my wife and son. Is there nothing you need to bring? He said, I was a reaver in my youth, and reavers travel light. I'll bring a rope for the mountains. He patted his dirk, which hung from his belt, and went back into the whitewashed house. I never saw his wife, not then, nor at any other time. I do not know what color her hair was. I threw another 50 stones into the burn as I waited until he returned, with a coil of rope thrown over one shoulder, and then we walked together away from a house too grand for any reaver, and we headed west. The mountains between the rest of the world and the coast are gradual hills, visible from a distance as gentle, purple, hazy things like clouds. They seem inviting. They are slow mountains, the kind you can walk up easily, like walking up a hill, but they are hills that take a full day and more to climb. We walked up the hill, and by the end of the first day, we were cold. I saw snow on the peaks above us, although it was high summer. We said nothing to each other that first day. There was nothing to be said. We know where we were going. We made a fire from dried sheep dung and a dead thorn bush. We boiled water and made our porridge, each of us throwing a handful of oats and a finger pinch of salt into the little pan I carried. His handful was huge and my handful was small, like my hands, which made him smile and say, I hope you will not be eating half of the porridge. I said I would not, and indeed I did not, for my appetite is smaller than that of a full-grown man. But this is a good thing, I believe, for I can keep going in the wild on nuts and berries that would not keep a bigger person from starving. A path of sorts ran across the high hills, and we followed it and encountered almost nobody. A tinker and his donkey, piled high with old pots, and a girl leading the donkey, who smiled at me when she thought me to be a child, and then scowled when she perceived me to be what I am, and would have thrown a stone at me had the tinker not slapped her hand with the switch he had been using to encourage the donkey. And later, we overtook an old woman, and a man she said was her grandson on their way back across the hills. We ate with her, and she told us that she had attended the birth of her first great-grandchild, and that it was a good birth. She said she would tell our fortunes from the lines in our palms if we had coins to cross her palm. I gave the old biddy a clipped lowland groat, and she looked at my palm. She said, I see death in your past, and death in your future. Death waits in all our futures, I said. She paused, There in the highest of the highlands, where the summer winds have winter on their breath, where they howl and whip and slash the air like knives. She said, there was a woman in a tree. There will be a man in a tree. I said, will this mean anything to me? One day, perhaps. She said, beware of gold. Silver is your friend. And then she was done with me. To Colin McInnes, she said, your palm has been burned. He said that was true. She said, give me your other hand, your left hand. He did so. She gazed at it intently. Then, you return to where you began. You will be higher than most other men, and there is no grave waiting for you where you are going. He said, you tell me that I will not die? It is a left-handed fortune. I know what I have told you, and no more. She knew more. I saw it in her face. That was the only thing of any importance that occurred to us on the second day. We slept in the open that night. The night was clear and cold, and the sky was hung with stars that seemed so bright and close, I felt as if I could have reached out my arm and gathered them like berries. We lay side by side beneath the stars, and Colin McInnes said, death awaits you, she said. But death does not wait for me. I think mine was the better fortune. Perhaps. He said, it's all nonsense. Old woman talk, it's not truth. I woke in the dawn mist to see a stag watching us curiously. The third day, we crested those mountains and we began to walk downhill. My companion said, when I was a boy, my father's dirk fell into the cooking fire. I pulled it out, but the metal hilt was as hot as the flames. I did not expect this, but I would not let the dirk go. I carried it away from the fire and plunged the sword into the water. It made steam. I remember that. My palm was burned, and my hand curled as if it was meant to carry a sword until the end of time. I said, you with your hand, me, only a little man, fine heroes we are who seek our fortunes on the misty isle. He barked a laugh, short, without humor. Fine heroes, was all he said. The rain began to fall then, and did not stop falling. That night we passed a small croft house. There was a trickle of smoke from its chimney, and we called out for the owner, but there was no response. I pushed open the door and called again. The place was dark, but I could smell tallow, as if a candle had been burning and had recently been snuffed. No one at home, said Colin, but I shook my head and walked forward, then leaned my head down into the darkness beneath the bed. Would you care to come out? I asked. For we are travelers, seeking warmth and shelter and hospitality. We would share with you our oats and our salt and our whiskey, and we will not harm you. At first the woman, hidden beneath the bed, said nothing, and then she said, my husband is away in the hills. He told me to hide myself away if the strangers come, for fear of what they might do to me. I said, I am but a little man, good lady, no bigger than a child. You could send me flying with a blow. My companion is a full-sized man, but I do swear that we shall do nothing to you, save partake of your hospitality and dry ourselves. Please do come out. All covered with dust and spiderwebs she was when she emerged, but even with her face all begrimed, she was beautiful, and even with her hair all webbed and grayed with dust, it was still long and thick and golden red. For a heartbeat, she put me in the mind of my daughter, but that my daughter would look a man in the eye, while this one glanced only at the ground, fearfully, like something expecting to be beaten. I gave her some of our oats, and Colin produced strips of dried meat from his pocket, and she went out to the field and returned with a pair of scrawny turnips, and she prepared food for the three of us. I ate my fill. She had no appetite. I believe that Colin was still hungry when his meal was done. He poured whiskey for the three of us. She took but a little, and that with water. The rain rattled on the roof of the house and dripped in the corner, and, unwelcoming though it was, I was glad that I was inside. It was then that a man came through the door. He said nothing, only stared at us, untrusting, angry. He pulled off his cape of oiled sacking and his hat, and he dropped them on the earth floor. They dripped and puddled. The silence was oppressive. Colin McInnes said, your wife gave us hospitality when we found her. Hard enough she was in the finding. We asked for hospitality, I said, as we ask it of you. The man said nothing, only grunted. In the highlands, people spend words as if they were golden coins, but the custom is strong there. Strangers who ask for hospitality must be granted it, though you have a blood feud against them and their clan or kind. The woman, little more than a girl she was, while her husband's beard was gray and white, so I wondered if she was his daughter for a moment, but no, there was but one bed, scarcely big enough for two. The woman went outside, into the sheep pen that adjoined the house, and returned with oatcakes and a dried ham she must have hidden there, which she sliced thin and placed on a wooden trencher before the man. Callum poured the man whiskey and said, "We seek the Misty Isle. Do you know if it is there?" The man looked at us. The winds are bitter in the highlands, and they would whip the words from a man's lips. He pursed his mouth. Then he said, I saw it from the peak this morning. It's there. I cannot say if it will be there tomorrow." We slept on the hard earth floor of that cottage. The fire went out, and there was no warmth from the hearth. The man and his woman slept in their bed beneath the curtain. He had his way with her beneath the sheepskin that covered that bed, and before he did that, he beat her for feeding us and for letting us in. I heard them, and I could not stop hearing them, and sleep was hard in the finding that night. I have slept in the homes of the poor, and I have slept in palaces, and I have slept beneath the stars, and would have told you before that night that all places were one to me. But I woke before first light, convinced that we had to be gone from that place, but not knowing why. And I woke Colin by putting a finger to his lips, and silently we left that croft on the mountainside without saying our farewells, and I have never been more pleased to be gone from anywhere. We were a mile from the place when I said, "The island. You asked if it would be there. Surely an island is there or it is not there." Colin hesitated. He seemed to be weighing his words, and then he said, "The Misty Isle is not as other places, and the mist that surrounds it is not as other mists." We walked down a path worn by hundreds of years of sheep and deer and few enough men. He said they also call it the Winged Isle. Some say it is because the island, if seen from above, would look like butterfly wings, and I do not know the truth of it. Then, "And what is truth?" said jesting Pilate. "It is harder coming down than it is going up." I thought about it. Sometimes I think that truth is a place. In my mind, it's like a city. There can be 100 roads, 1,000 paths that will all take you, eventually, to the same place. It does not matter where you come from. If you walk toward the truth, you will reach it, whatever path you take. Colin McInnes looked down at me and said nothing. Then, "You are wrong. The truth is a cave in the Black Mountains. There is one way there, and one only, and that way is treacherous and hard, and if you choose the wrong path, you will die alone on the mountainside." We crested the ridge and we looked down to the coast. I could see villages below, beside the water, and I could see high black mountains before me, on the other side of the sea, coming out of the mist. Colin said, "There's your cave, in those mountains." The bones of the earth, I thought, seeing them, and then I became uncomfortable, thinking of bones, and to distract myself, I said, "And how many times is it you have been there?" "Only once." He hesitated. "I searched for it all my 16th year, for I had heard the legends, and I believed if I sought I should find. I was 17 when I reached it, and came back with all the gold coins I could carry." "And were you not frightened of the curse?" "When I was young, I was afraid of nothing." "What did you do with your gold?" "A portion I buried, and I alone know where. The rest I used as bride price for the woman I loved, and I built a fine house with it." He stopped, as if he had already said too much. There was no ferryman at the jetty, only a small boat, hardly big enough for 3 full-sized men, tied to a tree trunk on the shore, twisted and half dead, and a bell beside it. I sounded the bell, and soon enough a fat man came down the shore. He said to Colin, "It will cost you a shilling for the ferry, and your boy 3 pennies. I stood tall. I'm not as big as other men are, but I have as much pride as any of them. "I am also a man. I'll pay your shilling." The ferryman looked me up and down, then he scratched his beard. "I beg your pardon. My eyes are not what they once were. I shall take you to the island." I handed him a shilling. He weighed it in his hand. "That's 9 pence you did not cheat me out of." 9 pennies are a lot of money in this dark age. The water was the color of slate, although the sky was blue, and whitecaps chased one another across the water's surface. He untied the boat and hauled it, rattling down the shingle to the water. We waded out into the cold water and clambered inside. The splash of oars on seawater, and the boat propelled forward in easy movements. I sat closest to the ferryman. I said, 9 pence. It is good wages. But I have heard of a cave in the mountains on the Misty Isle filled with gold coins, the treasure of the ancients. He shook his head dismissively. Colin was staring at me, lips pressed together so hard they were white. I ignored him and asked the man again, a cave filled with golden coins, a gift from the Norsemen or the Southerners or from those who they say were here long before any of us, those who fled into the West as the people came. Heard of it, said the ferryman. Heard also of the curse of it. I reckon that the one can take care of the other. He spat into the sea. Then he said, you're an honest man. I see it in your face. Do not seek this cave. No good can come of it. I'm sure you're right, I told him without guile. I am certain I am, for it is not every day that I take a reaver and a little dwarfy man to the Misty Isle. Then he said, in this part of the world, it is not considered lucky to talk about those who went to the West. We rode the rest of the boat journey in silence, though the sea became choppier, and the waves splashed into the side of the boat such that I held on with both hands for fear of being swept away. And after what seemed like half a lifetime, the boat was tied to a long jetty of black stones. We walked the jetty as the waves crashed around us, the salt spray kissing our faces. There was a humpbacked man at the landing selling oatcakes and plums dried until they were almost stones. I gave him a penny and filled my jerkin pockets with them. We walked on into the Misty Isle. I am old now, or at least I am no longer young, and everything I see reminds me of something else I have seen, such that I see nothing for the first time. A bonny girl, her hair fiery red, reminds me only of another 100 such lasses and their mothers, and what they were as they grew, and what they looked like when they died. It is the curse of age that all things are reflections of other things. I say that, but my time on the Misty Isle, that is also called by the wise the Winged Isle, reminds me of nothing but itself. It is a day from that jetty until you reach the Black Mountains. Colin McGinnis looked at me, half his size or less, and he set off at a loping stride as if challenging me to keep up. His legs propelled him across the ground, which was wet and all ferns and heather. Above us, low clouds were scudding, gray and white and black, hiding each other and revealing and hiding again. I let him get ahead of me, let him press on into the rain until he was swallowed by the wet gray haze. Then and only then I ran. This is one of the secret things of me, the things I have not revealed to any person, save to Morag, my wife, and Johnny and James, my sons, and Flora, my daughter, may the shadows rest her poor soul. I can run, and I can run well. And if I need to, I can run faster and longer and more sure-footedly than any full-sized man. And it was like this that I ran then, through the mist and the rain, taking to the high ground and the black rock ridges, yet keeping below the skyline. He was ahead of me, but I spied him soon, and I ran on, and I ran past him on the high ground with the brow of the hill between us. Below us was a stream. I can run for days without stopping. That is the first of my 3 secrets, and one secret I have revealed to no man. We had discussed already where we would camp that first night on the Misty Isle, and Colin had told me that we would spend the night beneath the rock that is called Man and Dog, for it is said that it looks like an old man with his dog by his side, and I reached it late in the afternoon. There was a shelter beneath the rock, which was protected and dry, and some of those who had been here before us had left firewood behind, sticks and twigs and branches. I made a fire and dried myself in front of it and took the chill from my bones. The wood smoke blew out across the heather. It was dark when Colin loped into the shelter and looked at me as if he had not expected to see me that side of midnight. I said, "What took you so long, Colin McInnes?" He said nothing, only stared at me. I said, "There's trout, boiled in mountain water, and a fire to warm your bones." He nodded. We ate the trout, drank whiskey to warm ourselves. There was a mound of heather and of ferns, dried and brown, piled high in the rear of the shelter, and we slept upon that, wrapped tight in our damp cloaks. I woke in the night. There was cold steel against my throat, the flat of the blade, not the edge. I said, "And why would you ever kill me in the night, Colin McInnes? For our way is long, and our journey is not yet over." He said, "I do not trust you, dwarf." "It is not me you must trust," I told him, "but those that I serve. And if you leapt with me, but return without me, there are those who will know the name of Colin McInnes and cause it to be spoken in the shadows." The cold blade remained at my throat. He said, "How did you get ahead of me?" And here I was, repaying ill with good, for I made you food and a fire. I am a hard man to lose, Colin McInnes, and it ill becomes a guide to do as you did today. Now take your dirk from my throat and let me sleep. He said nothing, but after a few moments the blade was removed. I forced myself neither to sigh nor to breathe, hoping he could not hear my heart pounding in my chest, and I slept no more that night. For breakfast I made porridge and threw in some dried plums to soften them. The mountains were black and gray against the white of the sky. We saw eagles, huge and ragged of wing, circling above us. Colin sent a sober pace, and I walked beside him, taking 2 steps for every one of his. "How long?" I asked him. "A day. Perhaps 2. It depends on the weather. If the clouds come down, then 2 days, or even 3. The clouds came down at noon, and the world was blanketed by a mist that was worse than rain. Droplets of water hung in the air, soaked our clothes and our skin. The rocks we walked upon became treacherous, and Colin and I slowed in our ascent, stepped carefully. We were walking up the mountain, not climbing, up goat paths and craggy, sharp ways. The rocks were black and slippery. We walked and climbed and clambered and clung. We slipped and slid and stumbled and staggered, and even in the mist, Colin knew where he was going, and I followed him. He paused at a waterfall that splashed across our path, thick as the trunk of an oak. He took the thin rope from his shoulders and wrapped it around a rock. "This was not here before," he told me. "I'll go first." He tied one end of the rope about his waist and edged out along the path into the falling water, pressing his body against the wet rock face, edging slowly, intently through the sheet of water. I was scared for him, scared for both of us, holding my breath as he passed, only breathing when he was on the other side of the waterfall. He tested the rope, pulled on it, motioned me to follow him when a rock gave way beneath his foot and he slipped on the wet rock and fell into the abyss. The rope held, and the rock beside me held. Colin McInnes dangled from the end of the rope. He looked up at me, and I sighed, anchored myself by a slab of crag, and I wound and pulled him up and up. I hauled him back onto the path, dripping and cursing. He said, "You're stronger than you look," and I cursed myself for a fool. He must have seen it on my face, for after he shook himself, like a dog sending droplets flying, like you do after the Room of Rain, Cha-Cha, he said, "My boy Colin told me the tale you told him about the Campbells coming for you and you being sent into the fields by your wife with them thinking she was your mom and you a boy." "It was just a tale," I said, "something to pass the time." "Indeed?" he said, "for I heard tell of a raiding party of Campbells sent out a few years ago, seeking revenge on someone who had taken their cattle. They went, and they never came back. If a small fellow like you can kill a dozen Campbells, well, you must be strong, and you must be fast." I must be stupid, I thought ruefully, telling that child that tale. I had picked them off one by one like rabbits as they came out to piss or to see what had happened to their friends. I had killed 7 of them before my wife killed her first. We buried them in the glen, built a small cairn of stacking stones above them to weigh them down so their ghosts would not walk, and we were sad that Campbells had come so far to kill me, that we had been forced to kill them in return. I take no joy in killing. No man should, and no woman. Sometimes death is necessary, but it is always an evil thing. That is something I am in no doubt of, even after the events I speak of here. I took the rope from Colin McInnes, and I clambered up and up over the rocks to where the waterfall came out of the side of the hill, and it was narrow enough for me to cross. It was slippery there, but I made it over without incident, tied the rope in place, came down it, threw the end of it to my companion, and walked him across. He did not thank me, neither for rescuing him nor for getting us across, and I did not expect thanks. I also did not expect what he actually said, though, which was, "You're not a whole man and you're ugly. Your wife, is she also small and ugly like yourself?" I decided to take no offense, whether offense had been intended or no. I simply said, "She is not. She is a tall woman, almost as tall as you, and when she was young, when we were both younger, she was reckoned by some to be the most beautiful girl in the lowlands. The bards wrote songs praising her green eyes and her long red golden hair." I thought I saw him flinch at this, but it is possible that I imagined it, or more likely wished to imagine that I had seen it. "How did you win her, then?" I spoke the truth. I wanted her, and I get what I want. I did not give up. She said I was wise, and I was kind, and I would always provide for her. And I have. The clouds began to lower once more, and the world blurred at the edges, became softer. She said I would be a good father, and I have done my best to raise my children, who are also, if you are wondering, normal-sized. "I beat sense into young Colin," said older Colin. "He is not a bad child." "You can only do that as long as they are there with you," I said. And then I stopped talking, and I remembered that long year, and also I remembered Flora when she was small, sitting on the floor with jam on her face, looking up at me as if I were the wisest man in the world. "Ran away, eh?" "I ran away when I was a lad. I was 12. I went as far as the court of the king over the water, the father of the current king." "That's not something you hear spoken aloud." "I'm not afraid," he said. "Not here. Who's to hear us? Eagles?" I saw him. He was a fat man who spoke the language of the foreigners well, and our own tongue only with difficulty. But he was still our king. He paused. "And if he is to come to us again, he will need gold for vessels and weapons, and to feed the troops that he raises." I said, "So I believe this is why we go in search of the cave?" He said, "This is bad gold. It does not come free. It has its cost." Everything has its cost. I was remembering every landmark. Climb at the sheep's skull, cross the first 3 streams, then walk along the 4th until the 5 heaped stones, and find where the rock looks like a seagull, and walk on between 2 sharply jutting walls of black rock, and let the slope bring you with it. I could remember it, I knew, well enough to find my way down again, but the mists confused me, and I could not be certain. We reached a small loch, high in the mountains, and drank fresh water, caught huge white creatures that were not shrimps or lobsters or crayfish, and ate them raw like sausages, for we could not find any dry wood to make our fire that high. We slept on a wide ledge beside the icy water, and woke into clouds before sunrise when the world was gray and blue. "You were sobbing in your sleep," said Colin. "I had a dream," I told him. "I do not have bad dreams," Colin said. "It was a good dream," I said. It was true. I had dreamed that Flora still lived. She was grumbling about the village boys and telling me of her time in the hills with the cattle and of things of no consequence, smiling her great smile and tossing her hair the while, red golden like her mother's, although her mother's hair is now streaked with white. "Good dreams should not make a man cry out like that," said Colin. A pause, then. "I have no dreams. Not good, not bad." "None?" "Not since I was a young man." We rose. A thought struck me. "Did you stop dreaming after you came to the cave?" He said nothing. We walked along the mountainside, into the mist, as the sun came up. The mist seemed to thicken and fill with light in the sunshine, but did not fade away, and I realized that it must be a cloud. The world glowed, and then it seemed to me that I was staring at a man of my size, a small, humpty man, his shadow standing in the air in front of me like a ghost or an angel, and it moved as I moved. It was haloed by the light and shimmered, and I could not have told you how near it was or how far away. I have seen miracles, and I have seen evil things, but never have I seen anything like that. And I have to tell you that I am seeing a low battery indicator on my phone, and I am going to take a short break, plug in my phone, and come back and finish the story tonight. So, stay tuned. I shall return.